Hey, Joe Harris here in the workshop. Today I figured we'd talk about something that a lot of people want to know about. Should you do the hobby for fun or should you do it for profit? Most people obviously do this for fun because that's usually what anybody gets into this type of stuff for. They want to make different things and stuff that you maybe can't buy at the store, or they just have a specific way they want to make it instead of trying to get something that maybe isn't exactly what they want. Some of the stuff that the stores will make, it may be like a specific character in a comic book that you want to make an action figure of that they haven't ever made, and they just probably never will because it's not really that popular. Or maybe it's a vehicle that it's too expensive for the companies to make it, so you decide you want to make it yourself. A lot of companies don't want to even make play sets anymore, so you only really have an option of making it yourself. So that's where customizing usually comes in. A lot of people will end up coming in and they'll buy an already existing some kind of toy or whatever, and they'll bash it together, as you've heard when I talked about the terms. And it'll be stuff that people actually have decided to create themselves, and maybe it's a G.I. Joe base, or maybe it's a He-Man base, or He-Man castle, or He-Man palace, or I don't know, maybe something for the core even, or something for one of Marauder's figures, or something that Boss Fight did. But it doesn't really matter what it is. It's usually nothing out there that's currently on the market that you can easily buy, so that's the only option you have, is make it yourself. So when you're making it yourself, you're just doing it for fun, and you're doing it for your display. You want to set it up and put it on your shelf and be able to put all your figures on it, or have your figure interact with the different things that's already out there. So that's what you end up doing, is making your own thing. And for the most part, it's usually very fun to do that, and a lot of people use it to relax with hard days worth of work and you're stressed out or whatever, so you decide you want to go ahead and just release some stress, and you go out in your workshop or at your desk if you just have a little desk set up or whatever, and you can go ahead and start making your different projects, and it's relaxing. And that's usually what a lot of people do it for, is to be able to relax. They generally want to be able to make their stuff to have fun, and they go on Facebook and various different groups, and they like to show off the different stuff that they've made and just say, look what I did, and get the praise for it, because that's fun. It's great to be able to do that, and great for people to notice what you've done. But then eventually you do, whenever you're showing off your stuff, you start running into people asking, are you selling? So that's where the problem starts coming in. Or not necessarily a problem, sometimes it is for some people, sometimes it's not. But the situation is, somebody likes what you did and they would like to be able to buy a version of what you did because they maybe can't do it, or they don't want to do it, whatever the case may be. So what you end up doing is you end up trying to figure out, should I sell or should I just keep doing it for fun? So that's where we're at today on this video. We're going to talk about some of that type of stuff, and maybe we can be able to give you some ideas and you can decide what path you want to go down. When I originally was making these gonks here, I decided I wanted to just do it for fun. It was just something, whenever I had the 3D printer, I decided I wanted to see if it could be done. And I just started playing around with it in the 3D program, put them together, and came up with the idea of how to do them. And I just started, like I said, playing around, and it was something just for the fun of it. And whenever I showed it off, a couple people started saying, are you going to sell those? So I started trying to decide, do I want to really actually sell them or not? And people was kind of, to put it in a simple term, people was begging for it, really. And so I ended up going ahead and selling a few of them. And people liked what I was doing, so I just continued doing a couple different ones, but I never did actually go real heavy into these. But that gives you some kind of an idea right there. What the problem is whenever you start making certain things like this, you're talking about multiple hours worth of a print and all the various cleanups and stuff, and then all the paint. And then you can't really sell them for a whole lot because, I mean, yeah, there's people that are doing it, that's selling it for a higher dollar, and there's people buying them for the higher dollar, but I just don't like doing that. If I'm going to sell something like this, I want to try to be within a good bracket that I feel is fair. So that's a fine line you have to start walking, and then you have to decide on that whenever you do start selling. Do you want to really actually price it too high and then make the extra money, which you kind of need to because of the work that's involved? Or do you want to actually be fair and price it, and you're going to make more of them by doing that because there's going to be more people wanting them? So I don't know. That's, like I said, that's where some of the questions are. And then you get into a project like this. This one was strictly nothing but for fun. And whenever I started making it, I didn't really have any intentions of anything to try to sell anything with it, because, and this took probably, I think, about 2 days to print all the parts, and then it was another 3 or 4 days to put it all together and paint it and putting stickers on it and everything. So once you go through all of that, you really don't want to actually try to sell something like that, because you're going to want to get like $100 or more for it, and a lot of people are not going to want to buy something that expensive unless they really want it. And if you're doing it to sell and you think you're going to make a living off of it, you're only going to sell a couple of those every so often, and you can't make a living off of something like that. So you start running into more questions with it. But as you can see, with the detail work that's involved, and yes, it moves, it's fully articulated, you can be able to move all of the joints around and the elbows, and the fingers are capable of movement. You can move the fingers around and it rotates. And yeah, this was kind of an idea of built off of like the Aliens power loader type of a kind of an idea, and I just kind of played around with it. It was just something I wanted to do. And something like this, to give you the full advice on it, what I would usually end up doing is I would probably sell the parts. Just go ahead and print it and sell it as a kit and let other people be able to do it themselves. Then they can be able to paint it whatever color they want and do anything else they want to do with it. And if they want to add more parts to it or change something up, it will be real easy for them to do then. And like that, I guess it would probably be fine if you're really wanting to get into selling something of this type. But again, that runs into the idea of for fun or to sell. And you always start running into stuff like that continuously whenever you're doing this, and if it happens to look good enough to somebody else, because there's always going to be somebody wanting to buy something you did. And then you got to decide how to do it, what to do, how much you want to sell it for, what's too high. It's just all the different factors. And then, of course, it starts running into the ideas of displays and play sets. When you start making some of the different things that you might want to set up to show off your figures yourself on your whatever, a curio cabinet or a display or just some or a shelf or whatever, just some kind of a setup that you have, and you put some kind of a little backdrop together, and then you start showing it off. Again, you're going to have people start asking you, where'd you get that? So you start running into, again, should you sell? Because they're going to want to know whether or not you're going to make them one. So, and as you see, this is a thing that I was working with Bucky O'Hare figures. And it's the bridge of the command center of, I forget what the ship is right now, but you can tell me down in the comments and remind me what it is. I've done forgot. But yeah, you could put the figures on it and be able to set it up and all that. And because Boss Fight is doing Bucky O'Hare figures, people are buying them, so they want to have a display, and there's nothing out there. So that comes into that same thing as should you sell. So you have to decide what you want to do. And whenever it comes into a playset like this, you run into shipping problems because, again, whenever you start selling something this large, and like here's my hand right here, or I've got a core action figure here so you can see, and like you see, it is fairly large. So if you try to ship something like that, you're going to run into the problem of shipping costs. And will they pay the shipping costs? So it's just a whole lot of different things to think about. And that starts running into an issue of whenever you're doing it for fun and then you start trying to sell for profit, it may not be fun anymore, because some people don't like to have to go through all of that type of stuff, and then you start running into various other problems. And so you got to outweigh the good and the bad and decide what is fun. And then you have to create the graphics. You have to make all of the different stuff to be able to make your different backdrops and make this, whatever, just the different things that you're doing. And that's going to take time, and it may take time away from something else that you could be doing of making another action figure for fun. So like I said, that runs into that big debate that you see a lot of times on different like Facebook groups and all that. You'll see a bunch of people always talking about the problems of doing the different stuff and finding time, and then whenever they start making stuff and selling, whether or not it's worth it. And so again, you have to decide what's good for you. And then once you start actually getting into the idea of selling for profit, then you're running into the problem of equipment. And should you buy this type of stuff? This is the CNC machine, and I just showed you the 3D printers. And then there's a scroll saw over here, and there's a cutoff saw, and then there's the oscillating spindle sander. And then I've got a router that's under there. I hadn't used it in a little while, but it's under there. And then I have the belt sander. And then there's a table saw under all that junk, but that stuff I'm working on, and I don't need the table saw right now. And then of course there's the drill press, and then the band saws. So you start running into that. Should you actually have all of that equipment? And then if you're doing it for fun, of course, you don't really need all of that type of stuff. But if you're doing it for profit, you're going to want to speed up your process. And because you're going to speed up your process, then you're going to want to be able to have stuff that's going to make it easier for you. So you do start needing some of that type of equipment. Otherwise, you're going to be taking forever to make just a little simple thing. So that's where it comes down to once you get into profit. What exactly are you going to make? What do you need to be able to make it with? Do you want to put the expense of getting a bandsaw? Do you want the expense of any of the other various different things? Yeah, there's some tools out here that I have that I don't really need specifically for all of the stuff I'm doing. And this happened to be stuff that over the years, like I said, this used to be my dad's workshop, and so there's a lot of equipment he had. And there's different things that I wouldn't necessarily have bought if it was something that I was doing, but it's here, so of course I'm going to use it. But yeah, it depends on what your projects are. And if you're doing just simple action figures and stuff like that, you could get by with just a handsaw, a Dremel, and some files and some sandpaper and paint, and you can make your figure without too much problem. Some putty maybe for details and stuff. But play sets, you're going to need a carpet knife at least, because like styrene or some other type of plastic like that, you're going to have to cut it, you're going to have to glue it up, you're going to have to put all your details together, and you're going to have a printer to print your graphics, and it gets into a bunch of different stuff. So again, like I said, should you do it for profit or should you do it for fun? And my reasoning for getting into it and doing it for some profit, I'm not making a living off of this. It's just something that I do as an extra thing. But the reason that I got into it is, like I said, the Cobra base. That was the main thing. I was just doing custom figures and stuff like that. And whenever I started doing the Cobra base, a lot of people wanted them, and so it got into being more and more and more. So I started getting some different pieces of equipment to make it easier for me to be able to do it, and it was specific stuff for what I needed to do. And once I started doing that, I wanted to try a few other things, and that's where the gliders came in, and I started making different gliders to show some of the different things there that could be done, and sold, I don't know, probably more than 100 of them so far, but I need to get back to those. I've been needing to get back to those, and I plan to. Now that Eagle Force is out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and get right back into the Cobra bases, and as you've seen on the previous video, I've been working on that. And so, like I said, you decide what you want to do, but just know that unless you're going to go full-time for this, it's not going to be something you can probably make a living off of. I would say unless you're going to do this as your main job, you're really not going to make enough off of hobby building to be able to make a living. It's not going to pay like monthly utilities and stuff like that, really, because you just can't get enough work done within a month's time to be able to do that. If you're selling different stuff, you're going to make maybe a couple $100 maybe, and then your utilities end up running a lot more than that. So if you're going to do this as a profit, my suggestion is as a side thing, and keep your day job, because that's going to be your best bet. But if you've only been kind of considering doing this and you haven't really gotten into it yet and you're doing it for fun and you really don't feel like getting into doing it for profit, I would probably say go ahead and stay doing it for fun, because it kind of can ruin some of your fun to start doing this for profit, because you start deciding on when are you going to have time to do something for yourself. Because if you're making a lot of stuff, you run into that. You're going to run into having more time to do stuff for other people, and you won't have enough time for doing it for yourself. Watch some of the guys that's on YouTube doing the foam building. Whenever they're talking about the stuff, they'll have a guest on, and the guest will ask them, when's the last time you built something for yourself? And they'll sit there and think, well, I don't know. And so it's always the same kind of a thing with any type of a hobby build. If you get into it for profit, you start running into, when are you going to do something for yourself for fun? So again, that's where it comes to, is for profit or for fun. And the ultimate answer is something you're going to have to decide for yourself. But I wanted to show a few different things here, and I hope I didn't really confuse you too much with my explanations. I mean, I was just trying to be very real about it and trying to tell you directly what I've run into. And again, like the Kickstarter stuff that I did. Uh, Whenever I got into all that, the problems that I ran into in the process of trying to get everything made, that took quite a long time to actually do everything. And it wasn't really necessarily because of the build itself, because I probably could have wrapped that type of stuff up a lot quicker. It's just the problems of life that you run into. And so you're going to run into that too whenever you're trying to do different things, and that's got to be thought of. And so, like I said, you just have to try it out if you want to try to sell something for profit. Make a few things and just see what it does. And if it does well, then that's great, because sometimes you can just figure out your path and go down that way to be able to do the stuff the way you do it. And it may actually work out better than the next person. You just never really know. But again, you have to ultimately decide if you want to do it for profit or for fun. And I like doing what I do, and I like being able to make the stuff and sell the things to people, because so many people seem to like it, and I enjoy when people like the stuff that I make. So that's a lot of reward to me. But again, I'm not going to quit my day job, so I'm going to go ahead and continue to do other things too, and the hobby builds will just be on the side. So hopefully that helps you out, and hopefully that's kind of a pretty good discussion to be able to show you some ideas. A lot of people that get into the customizing for profit, they're thinking of the companies like Hasbro and Mattel and stuff that they're making and stuff that they're not making, of course. And so you start running into the idea of the stuff they're not making that you're trying to make. Should you try to offer it to other people because they're going to want it just as well as you do? And so that again runs into the whole idea of the big companies versus what you're capable of doing. The big companies, they're getting it done over in other countries like in China and stuff like that. And so it, of course, is less costly, and they're able to have other people doing it, and it's multiple people working on the project at the same time, and it's being cast injected into the different machines and things like that, so you don't have to run into all the hand making that you would have to do. So a lot of people start running into the idea of, well, there's Boss Fight Studio, and there's Super 7, and there's Marauder. What about them? How are they able to do it and I can't? Well, again, that starts running into a whole different thing than just being a customizer. They have more experience. Most of the people has either worked in one way or another in the industry, so they know more about what they're doing than what you or I may actually know. And so it starts running into the same thing as what Hasbro's doing. They're getting it made elsewhere. They're not in a workshop hand making the items. So again, it starts running into the idea of these Kickstarters and some of these other people that's making action figures and stuff. Well, that's another type of an idea, and that starts running into some different tricky ideas, really. That's something that there's a lot of people that's capable of doing it. And if you put your time into it and you have the contacts and you're capable of getting all of the different stuff lined up, you can do that. That's not actually out of the question. That starts running into almost within the idea of doing it for profit. But there's a lot of factors a lot of people don't think about when they first start it. And they start running into different blind expenses that they didn't really think of in the first place. So you start again hitting that same exact problem. Should you do it for profit or should you do it for fun? Everything's going to come back to that every single time, and you have to start deciding when you run into it, what are the benefits of one versus the other? That's the main goal, is whenever you are thinking of profit versus doing it for fun, you're going to want to decide what is your goal, what is your objective, what's the least amount of problems. Is it going to cost you more to try to do it for a profit than to just go ahead and play around and do it for fun and maybe sell a figure or two here and there? So you got to look at all the different little things before you actually cross that line, and start asking other people, and like watching my video here. So it's just the different things that you got to think about whenever you're doing all of these things. So that's going to do it this week for Trying to Make It. Please like, share, and subscribe. Ring that bell icon so that way you'll know when I upload a new video. I'm doing these weekly. We'll see you next week.